probably a lot more people. It's pretty remarkable. One of the ideas was like me thinking around like having the carpet out of days, and it's such a shame to try to do calls more of the show. Like you said, like pools and stuff like that. Beaches, other places that they can show different things like this. People can walk around and stuff. And they want to be part of a process, but they have a lot of process to move forward. Yeah. They want to be part of the process. Only if it's what they want, right? We did it. Well, that's, I mean, just a better building block.
We're good to go? And you can hear us? We're good. Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for your patience. Good evening. My name is Alysia Bone, and I'm the Garrett Park Citizens Association president. I'm here joined with the other members of the Citizens Association. Henrietta Keller is our treasurer. Steve Welker, our secretary, and Paul Doria Rose back there is our vice president. So before we get started with the forum, are there any other announcements, town announcements that anyone would like to make? Okay, great. Well, I'd like to just welcome you all and thank you so much for being here today. I'd also like to thank our candidates for town council. So I would like to introduce them. So to my left, we have Steve Peskowski. Yep. We have Peter Benjamin, Dan Simons, and Phil Schultz. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to just read a few ground rules and opening remarks. My goal in moderating is to ensure we cover as many topics as possible and that each candidate has a fair and equal opportunity to speak. This meeting is first and foremost a forum for the candidates to express their views on topics that are important to the town. It is not the appropriate venue to extensively debate a particular topic. This goes both for audience members and candidates. I do encourage audience members to present their questions succinctly and then give each candidate an opportunity to offer a response. Responses will be kept to 2 minutes. And please, if you ask a question, please do talk into the microphone so those listening remotely can hear. And please do state your name and your street that you live on. Questions should be addressed to all candidates, and I will rotate who answers first. I will allow limited responses to comments or criticism from other forum members or the audience, but in the end, I will endeavor to keep the conversation moving along. It goes without saying that it's in everyone's best interest to keep things civil, and if anyone lets their enthusiasm get the better of them, I will gently remind them. I do want to note that this year we're doing something a bit different. We are live streaming the forum to the Garrett Park YouTube channel, and Garrett Park citizens are welcome to provide questions remotely via our new email address, garrett.park.ca@gmail.com. So Paul will be monitoring this inbox throughout the event, and Steve will help us keep time to kind of help things move along. So I do plan to toggle between in-person questions and remote questions. And so again, that email address, in case anyone out there is interested in sending in a question, is garrett.park.ca@gmail.com. So with that, I will turn it over to our candidates for opening remarks. Steve?
I'll go first. So, hi, my name is Stephen Peskowski. I'm running for a second term as a council member. I've lived in Garrett Park for 10 years now and have been serving in various volunteer capacities for 8 of those 10 years, starting in 2011 with an effort presenting a well-received graphic explanation of the final recommendations of the Land Use Task Force just in this room. I serve currently as the council liaison for the Land Use Advisory Committee. I also serve as liaison or council member, if one goes by the wording in the ordinance, for the Historic Preservation Committee. I'm a past chair of that committee and have served with that great group for 7 years now. One of my contributions that I'm proud of from that committee was my commentary on the initial drawings for the sidewalks project that some of you may have heard of. Shifting the design to a narrower width and tinted surfaces to blend in better than standard concrete might. Those got melded into the project. I feel that I've made significant contributions to the town over the years, sharing expertise at a very low cost of approximately -$1 per hour. From my education and professional background, I'm a licensed architect, schooled locally at the Catholic University of America, as well as an urban planner with a master's degree from NYU Wagner School of Public Service. I'm trying to use that degree to an extent with this job. So my day job is heavy in capital expenditure planning and design, and much of my career experience is in historic preservation, sustainable design, and public government projects, which I think is very applicable to this town. I enjoy being able to contribute knowledge on projects that are important in Garrett Park, like meaningful renovation of this historic building, the town hall, and for topics current in council conversations like improving our parks. Serving in this body is not really that easy at times. Sometimes there are difficult conversations and there are many tough decisions that must be made with careful deliberation. So overall, the work is rewarding. It's a good group of people with varying advantages and that all want best for the town, all kind of coming from their vantage point. So we find ways in the end to move initiatives forward, blending those advantages. I'm not a politician by nature, and I don't have a better word than campaigning for the next few weeks, but I will be sharing efforts on this campaign with my colleague Dan Simons. I'd be honored to continue working with the town government, helping preserve and improve Garrett Park by having your vote on May 6th.
I'm Peter Benjamin, and what I like doing the most is making a difference. I like being in a situation where I can try to help any organization that I'm working with to move in a positive direction and to become better than it has been before. Now, I've done this all my career, and all of my career professionally has been in public service. I have continued that even before I retired, but after I moved into Garrett Park by being co-president of the Citizens Association, a member of many, many, many committees within this town, a council member, and for 12 years, a mayor. Those really provided opportunities for me to take a town that I really love, that I really care about, that has characteristics that are really important to me, and to try to have that town adapt to the changes that are coming about all around us in positive ways so that we can retain and focus on and make sure that the things that matter to us, our historic character, the fact that we are a community, the fact that we govern ourselves, the fact that we know our neighbors, things that are very different from the rest of Montgomery County and the whole metropolitan area, so that we can retain those and we can love those and we can pass those on to the people after us. And so a lot of what I've done in all of my work in this town has been exactly that. And it has been extremely rewarding to me, and it's something that I want to keep on doing. I really want to keep doing this. One of the things, for instance, that I would like to focus on is climate change. You may have heard me for the last couple of years talk a little bit about stormwater management, but I think we've now gotten to the point where climate change is really affecting all of us. And we as a town need to do more to protect our town, to protect our residents, to protect our homes, and to take actions that can be a model for other communities that are small communities where we can't necessarily solve all the problems, but we can show people how a small town can contribute, and if a lot of other small towns do the same thing, and some big cities, we can make a difference in climate change. So for instance, we're already recycling, and a lot of people are composting. And many of us who are composting take our compost and have it taken away by the compost crew or some other organization. What would happen if the town provided this as a town service so that everybody could compost and it would be taken away and composting would be added to the recycling that we do? Many of us also contract for solar or wind power. We do that in order to have electricity that's environmentally sensitive. What would happen if we as a town went to the people who provide electricity through solar or wind and contracted with them to have people in Garrett Park be able to get contracts with them for the provision of electricity through environmentally sensitive means at or below Pepco's prices? We could do that. There are more electric cars out there right now. More and more of us are buying those. What would happen if we as a town got together with a number of dealers that sell electric cars and negotiated deals whereby anybody from Garrett Park who came would get a large discount. It's something we could do. We are already seeing those effects of climate change in our water. More people are getting flooded basements. Kathy, who's sitting over there, my wife and I, who've lived here for 30 years, haven't had a flood since we first moved in. We had one then, we regraded, and all of a sudden this year we started getting flooding. That's been happening to a lot of other people in this town. It's time for us to have a comprehensive stormwater management plan that assures that we are protecting the homes, that we are not dumping our stormwater on our neighbors, and that Rock Creek is not being polluted by water from this town, which it is right now. So I've run out of time, but I want to give you the idea that these are the kinds of things I think are important. These are the kinds of things I would work for climate change. I'd like to work with the the Garrett Park Climate Action Network. I'd like to work with the town government, and I'd like to work with all of you to really improve our contribution to arresting climate change.
Thank you, Peter. Dan?
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Dan Simons. I'm definitely a newcomer to town, and I think I'm going for the youth vote. I'll be 50 next year. So clearly, right, I'm going after the youth vote, and I've lived in Garrett Park only just over a decade, not 2. So I know, I'm the new guy. I thought I would take these couple minutes and tell you a bit about who I am. So I'm clearly not a politician, and I'm not sure any of us necessarily are politicians, but I think when I listen to the news and I listen to politicians, they seem to talk about what they're going to do, and they make a lot of promises. They don't necessarily talk about how they're going to do those things, and they seem to leave out their character. So this is my commentary, not on my colleagues here, obviously, but at a national level. So it's sort of odd to talk about one's own character. I think one is far better served, by their reputation. But since I don't have anybody up here to talk but me, I'll tell you a little bit about my character and what I've done. So I'm a small business owner. I'm a restaurateur. I have 7 restaurants, about 1,500 employees. My business partner and I started our business from nothing. Lived in my mother-in-law's basement in Bethesda for 3 years when we started the business. Lost a bunch of money, made some money, and along the way, always made decisions that were for the long term of our business, the community that we're in, and for the people that we employ. And so I would say if you want to know who I am as what my character is and what I do, look at the company that I've built. Talk to the people that I employ. Google me. And as strange as it seems, I think that's where the reputations are found. And so I just can't let anybody else stake out a position more progressive on the environment than me. I really like the things that you're bringing up.
Thank you.
I've done these things in my company. And so last week we won an award from the DC government as one of the most sustainable and green businesses in the District of Columbia. So know that I love this little town. I haven't been here forever. I know that some things need to change, and some things damn well better not change. There are some things that are absolutely fantastic here, and there are some things that if we don't change, it won't be as fabulous as it's always been. But I promise you, if I stay on the council, if I get those votes, it will be civil, it will be adult, it will be professional, it will be effective. And I think we've had some history of it gets gossipy and it gets backbiting and people get frustrated and it becomes about the drama and it becomes about the personality. And what I can say for sure is those things are incredibly ineffective. You get lost in them, and it takes 7 years to complete a project, or people talk about the same things for 10 years or decades. And I think by bringing together real, mature, adult conversations and the ability to disagree without being disagreeable are what I bring to the table, and my track record has shown that. although I got onto the council without being voted in by replacing a council member, by the way, which is a great way to become an elected official, is to not have to campaign. If I knew how to do that again, I wouldn't have to be here. But I think you only get to do that once. But I had heard a lot of people said, I don't even know if you want to do this. I'm like, no, I love the town. And if the town needs someone to serve, I'll do that and I'll help. And I heard all about, again, the drama and what I just thought sounded super ineffective. And I feel on the short time I've been on the council, for those of you that have seen me in meetings or listened to the conversation, I've been able to agree and disagree with different council members, work towards solution, introduce some of my own legislation that I was an advocate for, like banning single-use plastic straws, which makes a tiny impact in town, but it makes a big impact at the state level, right? So I do think that we could do things in town that keep this town lovely. We can do things in an effective and a forward-looking way and still keep the fabric and the bonds, and we can really communicate well. And I think that we can do it together. And you know what? I'll tell you, you won't always get what you want, and I won't always do what you want. And sometimes half of you will disagree with me, and the other half will disagree with me, and sometimes you'll all disagree with me. But I will always tell you the truth. I will always focus on accomplishing things and getting them done in a transparent and effective way. There you go.
Dan? Bill?
Hi, my name is Phil Schultz, and everyone loves Garrett Park. It's the reason we all moved here. Each one of you with diverse backgrounds and opinions brings a unique perspective to our town. I enjoy discussing the issues that are important to you. Communication is the foundation of effective government. I'm proud to have initiated live streaming, such as we're doing right now, on YouTube for our town council meetings. That will allow you to view whenever you wish and wherever you wish the existing meetings or attend a council meeting, all by remote control. The way the council members work together and treat one another can impact the productivity of the council, which of course impacts you. The past year has been refreshing. Council discussions have been productive, collegial, collaborative, and out in the open, as they must be. This doesn't mean I always agree with my fellow council members, or they with me. But I respect their opinions. I bring a calm and balanced perspective to every decision. This council is about working together with civility, integrity to find solutions that make the best sense. As an electrical engineer, I have a unique set of skills that complement the skills sets of my colleagues on the council. I have 5 major goals for my next term. As you know by now, I'm passionate about transparent and open government. I am going to implement interactive viewer participation during the live stream council meetings. This will allow you to comment and ask questions from wherever you are. Safeguards will be put in place to prevent unauthorized access to the meetings. Sidewalks are on their way. We've received bids from multiple contractors, which are currently under review before they're submitted to the state for approval. It's important that neighbors impacted by the construction are aware of when things will happen in their front yards. As an engineer with years of project management experience, I will keep a close eye on the project schedule and budget. Also make sure that the town is sending regular updates and schedules to residents. In 2018, we received notice that small cell towers will be installed in communities across the U.S. to provide better internet access to mobile devices. I've done the research. I've looked over hundreds of photos of small cell towers installed in communities across the country. Frankly, some of these things are just plain ugly. Wires hang out everywhere, antennas stick out in all directions, while other installations are state-of-the-art and blend in well with their environment. If you want an ugly cell tower in your front yard, I know I sure don't. In January, I co-wrote legislation that will mitigate the impact of this federally mandated program at Garrett Park. And one thing to keep in mind is it is federally mandated, so we cannot stop them. However, we can have an impact on what they do and how they look in our town. I'm currently collaborating on an amendment that will address long-term maintenance and safety of installations in town. The council is currently addressing the impact of stormwater on Lower Kenilworth, Rokeby, and Porcupine Woods. As an engineer, I have a critical eye necessary to evaluate designs. It's important that we spend our town money wisely. The large number of cars parked at and moving around Penn Place makes it unsafe for pedestrians. I've secured money in the town budget to remove 2 poles sitting in the middle of the parking lot near the farmer's market. I will be forming a committee to address traffic flow and parking. As a town, we've talked about improving the situation for years, and we have. I was actually, one of the first things I did was sit on one of the committees that addressed that, and it was shelved. Now it's time to do something. I look forward to our discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, candidates, for your opening remarks. Now we're going to turn to the room for any in-person questions. Do we have anything from the audience? Could you please come to the mic and state your name and street?
I'm Beth Myers. Excuse me, I live at 10808 Claremont Avenue. I would like to thank each of you for running. I've served on the council for 3 terms, and prior years I served with Phil, I think with Peter. So I thank you for offering to run, first and foremost. And I would like to know from each of you, I know you've had different lengths of service to the town, but what would be your top 2 things that you feel that you've accomplished?
Thank you for the question. Since we started with Steve's opening remarks, let's go to Peter for the first response.
I hate being restricted to 2 things, especially after spending several years on the council and 12 as mayor. Some of the major things that I've done really relate either to changing the way we as a town work, to make it better, to make it more open, to allow people to express their opinion, and particularly to vote. 2 areas where we did that was by changing the my mind just went, by changing our legislation in such a way that, first of all, the first change, which occurred during my first term as mayor, was one where we actually adopted a balanced budget. We said, you have to have a balanced budget. And we also created a capital program so that money would carry over from year to year, and you'd be knowing how you were going to spend your dollars in order to maintain this town effectively. What we did just in this last couple of years was to change our election process, to make it easier for anybody to vote and express their opinion. So we now have not only what we had before, which is non-citizens of the United States can vote in the town, but you can register at the same time as you vote. You can register at almost any time. There are provisional ballots, so that if there's any question about how you voted, that your vote will still be taken in and will be evaluated, and finally you'll have a chance to have your vote actually counted. And a whole bunch of changes like that, all of which, there's actually one really big one, and that is there was the potential for town management, the town leaders, to have control over parts of the election. What we did was establish very clearly that the election judges are in charge and the town managers can't. Okay, so there's been a split in those areas. I want to do one real quick thing, even though my time is up officially, and I understand that.
5 seconds.
But there are major projects that we have done, really big ones. On all of those, it took money and not town money. It took money from the outside, and I was responsible for bringing in millions of dollars that did Strathmore Avenue, that did Penn Place, that did the sidewalks.
Thank you.
And I can tell you more about that later.
Thank you, Peter. Dan?
Simple question deserves a simple answer. I led the effort to ban plastic straws. We got it done. over 3 council meetings in the exact time frame that it was required. No more time, no less time, and we accomplished the goal. I helped a resident get a variance passed, which I would say was a harmless and victimless variance that was requested. The process could have gone on far too long and been far too difficult, but the town won, the resident won. Those are 2 of my accomplishments.
Thank you, Dan. Bill?
Well, I've got a whole bunch I could talk about, but seeing as I've got to limit it to 2, first one would have to be the live video streaming. It's been something that's been on my mind for years, to be able to get greater participation, to be able to have more transparent government, and to be able to reach more citizens. And I think with the live streaming, and shortly, if I get elected, to be augmented with live interaction is one of the biggest things that will probably hit us and make it better for everybody to be able to work with their neighbors and work with the council. And I would say working with my fellow council members to draft it almost literally the last minute, some good small cell tower legislation, which we needed to have in place by January 14th. It literally was like a drop dead date. We didn't have it in place. The federal government could basically say you have nothing in place, and we'd be left out in the open. But working together, we managed to get it done, and it's out there. And now, in my next term, if I'm elected, I would like to augment that with some additional statements that will make sure that people are keeping the cell towers in good shape and make sure things are safe.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll answer a question from Beth, who actually was the person who first nudged me into volunteering efforts for this town many years ago. So 2 for me, I think I was proud of the charrette that we held with the Historic Preservation Committee on this building last fall. It was a very successful meeting. I think it was really important to kind of have a big open discussion, move the conversation of what this building needs beyond just new paint and fixing a frozen pipe, and what do we really have for a grander vision. I think it was very successful. I was really pleased. The mayor told me it was the best meeting she ever attended in this town, so I was kind of proud of that. And it was very successful, so I think that was a good accomplishment. I think another one was bringing this council together. I felt like a sort of a linchpin in the summer. We had a change in mayors, and it was a little rocky road for a couple months. And I remember there was a lot of articles on listserv and various editorials in the paper and everything else. So it was, like I was saying, it was a rocky road, but we found a way to get it together. And I think I really pushed to be that person to kind of push us all to work together well. And I think the last 8, 9, 10 months, it's really worked well as a group. So.
Yes. Thank you, candidates. We'll do one more question from the room, and then we'll move over to the remote questions. Anything else from the audience here? Yes, sir. Please come to the front and state your name and address.
John King, Argyle Ave. About 10 years ago, a number of Garrett Park residents took on the responsibility to look at our land use rules. The land use...
That only just goes to the live feed. It doesn't go to the room.
The Land Use Task Force issued a number of recommendations, albeit reached through adversity. Other than the town's attorney suggesting that some county rules actually do apply in Garrett Park, I think nothing else has resulted from all that work. First, by hands, who of you has read the report, or at least the summary? Second, do any of you have any thoughts on that report?
We'll start with Dan.
Because I'm not a politician, I don't have thoughts on things I haven't read.
Bill.
Yes, I think there was a number of things in there that we didn't implement that were some good ideas, and I think we need to go back and revisit them, and the sooner the better.
I actually revisited them recently because it came up as a topic with one of the variances, well, 2 of the variances that were up in the last year and a half. I feel like there were a lot of good ideas that, John, you and I did a presentation here together on just that very topic. So I think that needs to be pulled off the shelf and relooked. There's actually some other ideas beyond it that the Land Use Advisory Committee and I've been talking about that maybe fix some quirks of this town and make it just a little bit easier to navigate. So it's something that's on my agenda for this year to bring it back up.
John, one of the things I've enjoyed over the years is working with you on making this town, or giving this town, real representation on issues relative to schools, where our kids go to school, what the boundaries are, what should happen. And I just wanted to mention that John has been the person who has been tireless. He and Liz, his wife, have been absolutely tireless. In doing these kinds of things. And actually, that's one of the things that a small town can do. It's a lot harder for a community to do it than a town that hangs together and really focuses on issues like that. One of the things that happens in all of the situations that we find ourselves in terms of being able to have our own laws, the ones that we pass and that we can do, versus the ones that the state reserves to itself. And we are in a situation where we can only act if the state has told us we can act. And one of the issues that we always have is how far can we go? Land use is one of the good examples. Very early on, we had a way to get around land use provisions because we had no official zoning authority. And we put together a setback ordinance which allowed people to do certain things and not others, and it was our way to try to control how big houses could be in this town. That worked until one time a judge figured out that we didn't really have the right to do what we were doing. And so after that, we and a number of other towns got together, and the state did in fact pass legislation that they gave us true zoning capability. So one of the things that is important, and that's where our current land use regulations come from, what's really important in all of this stuff is for us to make sure that we create what we can out of what we have, but stay within the limits
Thank you.
that the state has.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for your question. So now let's move over to the remote questions. Paul, would you like to read one out for us, please?
We've had one question come in at this point from Phil Rivers on Road Committee. And his question is, given that the town council recently voted to increase our property tax rate, that the town added a full-time staffer, and that the town faces significant capital expenses beyond the SRTS project, and given that the town council raised our property tax rate, even as real property tax revenues have continued to increase since at least 2015, $447,000 in 2015, as compared to about $540,000 last year. Will you commit to better financial restraint on the part of the town of Garrett Park? What procedures would you propose to determine the town's budgetary needs and to justify additional expenditures?
Thank you, Paul. We'll start with Phil.
And the answer is, of course. We would like to make sure that the town's money is spent in the best way possible. And just to give you an idea, we've actually changed, and I would like to thank Mayor Kathy for this, but one of the things she put together was a worksheet for our budget work session, which showed exactly how the revenues stack up and where things go. We also have our regular budget ordinance and monthly manager's reports. So there's a whole host of things that we use to keep track of our money. The one thing we have to remember is that there are a lot of big dollar projects coming up. That's just what happens in a town. And a few things have been, shall I say, neglected, left behind. I mean, things that we need to do. This building, for example. So we're gonna have to spend some money. We have to spend it in the best way possible. We have to make sure that our choices are wise, that they'll last for the long term. But in the end, we'll have to spend some money. And the increase in taxes basically amount to about $30 a person. And that sort of money is going to go to things, for instance, like this building. So.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah. there was a lot of deliberation on it, both last year when we decreased the tax rate by 1 penny, and then raised it again this year by 0.45 cents, I think it was. So it wasn't taken lightly, and I think this council and has been very judicious about finances. A lot of the squabbles that the council may have are about, are we really spending things the right way? So I don't think that is really an issue. And it, like Phil said, it's a pretty small amount. So we're trying to keep it in the same range, and the tax rates that we have are really not out of line with comparable communities around the county. So.
Peter?
A year ago, when we were trying to pass a budget, one of the big concerns that we had as we were putting the budget together was the change in the federal tax laws. And as you know, your state taxes also are paid based upon the federal tax laws. We were very concerned that the people in this town would suffer if they had to pay a higher rate. And I suspect that most of you really did pay more this year than you did in previous years. And the reason is that the people on the high end of the earning scale got a tax decrease, the people on the low end got a tax decrease, and the people in the upper middle income brackets, which is largely the people in this town, got an increase. We were concerned that we didn't want the town at the same time to make things worse. And so that pushed us back in terms of the number of dollars coming from the property tax. But overall, if you look at what happened over the year, we got plenty of money. We managed to survive just fine. So the concern that we have now is many of us are paying more. Is this going to make a difference? I think, as just got pointed out by Stephen, no, it's not going to be a big number. But the issue becomes, how are we handling our money? And how should we handle our money? And I think it's all got to be done in the open, and that has been the case ever since way, way back we changed the process of how we do budgets.
Dan?
I have to commend our new town manager, Andrea, and Mayor Kaki with the process that I've seen over the past 4 weeks with the town budgeting. Some of the questions that I asked when I came on board were, show me the budgets from the last 5 budget sessions. Show me the notes accompanying the budgets, the last 5 budget sessions. Show me the detail of the meeting minutes about these budget. How are these numbers arrived at? How were these decisions made? Those questions weren't able to be answered. So I wasn't here for the history, and the record keeping. What I can say is that the record keeping that I have seen in the past 6 weeks is vastly better than the record keeping that I've been unable to find relating to prior years. So I think that, yes, the question is, would I be more fiscally prudent? Of course, right? Who's going to raise their hand and say, no, I'm going to be not transparent, not prudent, and reckless? I think the point of the question is, what's the process that will allow for that? And so what I would say is we need to push for, and I am certainly in favor of, a more rigid process that defines a requirement of notes and documentation and the math and the formula on the spreadsheet. And so, for example, when we added that position for the town, I think there was agreement on the council that we needed that position. What wasn't done properly is that it wasn't effectively thought through and presented with budget and return on investment and what you would have to do in a private company, like the one that I run and the one plenty of you run and work in and what we're used to in the work world. So my answer to that question is, I would help us to bring what I see in the private sector into our government with that level of discipline and documentation.
Thank you, Dan. We'll do one more from the email.
Can I just respond to that for a moment? Because that was a direct attack on the previous administration, which is what I was.
A brief response.
Yes. I do want to make very, very clear that when we did budgets over the 12 years that I was mayor, we always had for each line item a complete explanation of what the number was, why the number changed, why the number stayed the same, and it was all recorded, and there were minutes made of every single meeting. If the current administration was not able to find that in the files, I don't know what to do about that. I haven't been around. But the data exists and the process was very, very carefully done.
Can I just respond to that? So truly, it wasn't, we could take it as a direct attack on the current administration's inability to find what the past administration did. So all I know is what I know, right?
Well, if you want to have that debate, the people who were in the office that did that are no longer there.
Which is why I started with, I think, Andrea, the new town manager, is a really good step in the right direction. And I think any of us would agree with that.
I agree with that.
I really, and let me
I
say,
agree with that.
I think you've done a lot of great things for the town. So it's not intended as an attack, but if I told you I'm going to have the courage to say what needs to be said, then people need to have the courage to hear what needs to be heard. I have the courage to hear what needs to be heard, and I will say what needs to be said.
And the return on investment for the additional positions was this administration, not the previous one.
So,
Correct.
Thank you for
Okay.
the dialogue. Let's move on to the next question, please. Anything online? No? We're okay. Anything from the room?
You have questions as well?
Oh, please.
Jack Mandel from Oakland Avenue. So I don't think there's a question of competence here. I mean, I think all four candidates are clearly competent. Experience, vision, and passion.
So it's not a question of competence. To me, it's a question of comedy. And I mean that with a T, not a D. All right? And so I know that, I mean, I can't point to Peter alone. I wish I could, and ask you to answer the question about comedy. I would rather have 5 average people able to work together than 5 extraordinary people who always argue. And so what are you going to do, Peter, if you are elected, to change the perception that comedy is not your strong suit? Oh, I'm sorry. What would you do? What would everybody do? What would everybody do to ensure? What would everybody do to ensure comedy, and not just comedy about getting along? Again, I understand. I'm out. It's exactly like you on the council, getting along. But I'm hearing these guys are putting together multi-year plans, multi-year projects, and it goes way beyond, you know, the small individual, what you know. And so I'm just asking how everybody is going to take the parts that their own strengths. How would you take your own strengths and then recognize your own weaknesses and then make that all work together?
So, Peter, I will give you an opportunity. Would you like to go first? Or?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Jack.
Is that question a plant?
No. I would not have planted that question. No, it's first of all, let me start out by saying that I have worked with a number of councils, and various members of the audience right now were council members in the years that I have been mayor, and they have been council members. And I have never seen a situation in which the council members couldn't work together and didn't work together well and didn't do the job right. I think every council I worked with has been excellent. Every council I've worked with has done a really good job, and I do think we work together well. What has happened over the last 7 years has been that we have had a project which changes our town, and there have been people in this town that haven't liked that. They have come to many meetings, both council meetings and others, and they have commented on that. Those of you that have attended any of those meetings will have noticed that I try very, very hard myself to make sure everybody is heard and to make sure everybody is respected, and that all the viewpoints that come out are heard by the council and all the other people in the room. We at that time didn't have streaming. Okay? So I would hope to be able to do the same kinds of things, and I believe I can work well with every single person at this table and with the mayor.
Thank you, Peter. We'll pivot back to you, Stephen.
Okay. I think I've been on this council for 2 years. I've worked well with everybody that's at this table, and the new mayor and the other members of council that aren't here as well. It's not to say there hasn't been some frustrations. I left my first year in council, I think once or twice. I can't even remember what the issues were where I left. Didn't even say goodbye to anybody. I was just muttering under my breath, like, what a waste of time this is. I felt like you could talk and things just wouldn't go anywhere. It would just be avoided or not really go forward. There were other times I felt like there were a lot of productive conversations. I feel like less of that the second year, but overall I feel like there's a good working relationship overall. It's just frustrating at times. So.
Dan?
Great question, Jack. There is nothing more important when it comes to getting results than a team. Absolutely nothing. I'd rather play with a team of bees that gets along than against a team of all-stars who can't get out of their own way. So for me, it's about listening skills. It's about being able to disagree and then accept someone else's position and move forward. I think our system of government in this country and this town is built so that when there is a majority, you can move forward. That's what majorities are about. And the minority on a vote or on a position doesn't get their way. And I don't think you should burn down your neighbor's house because they decided and were part of a majority. You should accept it, that sometimes you don't agree, right? And I think for some people that's difficult. And so then we should be able to talk to those that are on the losing side of an issue and say, hey, we understand you disagree. We know that that can feel sucky sometimes, but you know what? There's other issues. There's other stuff. And the sun's gonna come up tomorrow, and we're all lucky to be here to have these debates. And so I think you can still build consensus without having to label winners and losers and create entrenched opposition. And so I think that's the way the council can do that. I don't know enough about the history, but I'm certain that any lack of people getting along would be unfair to attribute to Peter or to Khaki or to any one other person. A team should be indicted together or should be rewarded together. And so my hunch is, whoever the people are, if the townspeople hold the standard high for the expectations and speak up to those who may be disagreeing and disagreeable, then I would presume that any formation of the council can be effective.
Well said, Dan. Well said.
Phil?
Well, I guess I'll say that, I've always worked to try and come to compromise or come up with some good ideas working with my fellow council members and mayor. I've been through a few different mayors, been through a few different councils, and believe that everybody has a right to be heard, whether you like it or not, whether you agree or not. And sometimes you will be on one side of the debate, and sometimes people will be on the other, and then there'll be something new, and you'll be flip-flop. The important point is that people be allowed to be heard, whether it be the council members, or it be the mayor, or it be the citizens, and especially the citizens, because that's who we're here representing. We're not representing ourselves or our own interests or whatever. So we need to make sure that people are heard, and sometimes we have to bite our tongues when people say things, and I've done it a few times in my life. But in the end, as long as people people present their arguments in a civil manner and in a non-emotional, calm manner, then we should listen and consider what they have to say. May not agree with it again, but we can do so. And I think with the council we've got now, I mean, I've, been on the side of things where I may not like it, but, I've come to a compromise or come to an agreement that this is what we're going to do, and then move on. And I've suggested ideas to tweak things, which I think have gone over fairly well, and I will continue to do as such.
Any other questions from the room? Your name and your street, please.
Steph Houghton and Shelley Court. So we have in our town a lot of very passionate, dedicated people. We also have a lot of people in our town who don't even Mayor, town council? Yeah, when do they meet? What's going on? Oh, we have a pool? There's a lot of people in Garrett Park that are completely disconnected. They're not on the listserv. They don't, maybe they get something in their box about the Bugle, maybe they don't. And we have a lot of turnover in Garrett Park. We have a lot of new people that have been in the last 10 years. I'm not sure if it's a third of the town has turned over in the last 10 or 15 years, but we have a lot of new residents, and we have residents that are completely disconnected to our community. And I know that we have a lot of outreach. I know we have our town listserv that a lot of people aren't on. We have our government listserv, which a lot of people aren't on. We have a lot of town events that nobody goes to. We also have a lot of people that do go. What I'm interested in is, how can you engage the people who are kind of apathetic, but yet could really help the town move forward on a lot of issues, or may then complain after the fact because they were disconnected, and then suddenly when something's almost done, they're like, what? No, nobody told me, or has this ever been done yet? And then they complain that it hasn't been done. I know that can be frustrating for the town council, for the mayors, for the government, for everybody in town who then has to go to another town council meeting and listen to somebody coming in brand new, and we've already had to listen to it for hours and hours and hours. So what could you guys do on the council to sort of find new ways to sort of penetrate the people who are disconnected residents? Thanks.
Start with Stephen.
But there already are some efforts towards that. There's a new committee that started last year that work on outreach, trying to find a social media, or there's other ideas that have been bandied about. I think it's a great thing that we'll be able to do. So hopefully that is successful. I tried to spread the word personally as much as I can. I tend to meet a fair amount of new people around town, so talk to them just kind of about different issues that are going on in town, and give them access to ask questions or link up with other people that may know more. So I think we're moving in the right direction on it.
So now we're going to actually switch it up a bit. Phil?
Well, I would say the first thing is what we're looking at for some of you at home, what you're looking at right now, which is live streaming of meetings. And I also intend, as I've said before, to bring in live interaction to allow you to be able to post questions. So that's probably the first thing, be able to make it easier for people to interact with the government. The second thing we can do is talking to our neighbors, and especially through events like we've got the Progressive Dinner coming up. It's being held by the Women's Club, and that's one spot where we go around to neighbors' houses, and we are also with other neighbors, and it gives everybody a chance to mix, see each other, have dinner at different people's houses and so forth, and get to know each other. And those are the sorts of spots where I usually talk about what I've done with town council or things like that. And our swimming pool is a great spot because a lot of people come there with their kids, or they're new, or they come to exercise, and so it's a great spot for us also to be able to spread the word, to say, hey, look, we've got this website, we've got we've got the website, we've got now the interactive will be coming, and we've got the Bugle and a number of other things that we can use. So to me, I think it's engaging as you see people who are new, engage with them and try and tell them, hey, look, here's some spots you can go look if you want to see what's going on in town.
Thank you, Phil. Peter?
So a couple of years ago, actually, we put together a committee, and our current mayor, Kaki, was in charge of that committee, which took our old website, which was dying and really didn't do anything useful, and replaced it with one that was interactive. That was the beginning of the process that is leading towards what's going on today with streaming video. The website we have now is one that you can get permits on. It's one, or you can file your permits. You can find out what's going on with trash collection. All sorts of things that the old website couldn't do. But the important part of all of this is personal interaction. And one of the things that I found fascinating is I'm doing a lot of going door to door to talk to people because I'm running in a situation that is unusual, moving from mayor to wanting to be on the council. And I'm surprised at the number of people that match what Steph just talked about. They don't even know that we have mayors. They don't even know that we have a town council. They don't even know, if they don't live, or if they're not U.S. citizens, that they can vote in the elections. And so I'm spending a fair amount of time talking with people, just giving them the basics of how our town works. Now, there are a certain number of people that don't want to know. They just want to live here. And there's not much we can do about them. But there are a lot of people that we can reach out to. And I have been really impressed with how receptive people have been when I've been able to talk to them and said, here's some of the activities we do. Here's some of the things you can get involved in. Here's how you can vote. If you aren't registered, we'll help you do that. There are ways for these things to happen, and I think we need to do a lot more of that.
I think we have opportunities to modernize the listserv. I think we have sort of overlapping listserv, and so just modernizing the communications with the Communications Advisory Committee. There's been discussion of some sort of digital signage board. So I think modernization, more interactive communication. So there's certainly some things that as a council and as town government that we can do, but when I hear your question, I'm actually not convinced that that's the town council and the town government's job. I think my answer, and the question is well worth thinking deeply about, but I think my answer is that's on each of us individually. And that's that look in the mirror to say, do I know my neighbors? Those new folks that moved in 2 houses down, did I send them a plum cake? Right? And so I think it's a sort of a back to basics initiative. I'm not letting the town government off the hook. I think that we can fund the Communications Advisory Committee and we can continue to modernize the comms with the website. But I think it's probably an individual thing. And look, I lived in town for, I don't know, the first 5 or 6 years, and I had really little kids and I wasn't engaged in the town, and that wasn't a priority for me. But because of all the excellent things in the town, when I was ready, you know what, the town was there for me. So I think some of it is a natural ebb and flow, some of it is town funding and action, and a lot of it is that personal engagement with those closest to us in our own little streets and neighborhoods.
Anything else from the room at this point? Yep, please.
Hi, I'm Sue Petito. I live at the end of Rokeby Avenue. It has occurred to me more than once over the last, 22 years have we been here? Every time more people want to be on the council than we have seats for, it seems to go against the benefit for the town. Is there any way to expand the number of seats on town council? So if 5, 6, or 7 people, the town was formed in 1898 with a mayor, a weak government, says the state of Maryland, a mayor and 5 town council members. And I would suggest that the population back then was rather smaller than it is today. And if people want to be engaged and serve, why do we limit it to 5 people only? I know it's off the subject, but really, we have wonderful people who want to volunteer their time and efforts and talents. And
So is this a question for
I
our
thank you
candidates?
all, because this is not a job for me.
Dan, you're first up if you'd like to add or respond.
Well, certainly with the salary we receive, the town, we can afford as many council members as you want.
I don't really need to have I don't mean to put you on the spot to have a discussion about it. I thank you all.
Well, thank you.
It's too bad you can't all join in.
Thank you.
There's always things to do.
Right. So it sounded like more of a comment than an actual question, but if there's no kind of responses to that, we
I
can
can
move
give a
on.
quick response.
Oh, well, all right. Well, let's
go through.
We can go through. That's totally. So Peter, you're next.
Well, we can always pack the council. That can be done. That's the nice thing about having our own government, is we don't believe, for one reason or another, and it's got to be more than just you, Sue. A few other people have to say yes too. But if we don't believe that we have the right number on there and we want more or we want less, all we do is change our charter. Okay? And we've changed our charter several times. Now, I'm always nervous about changing the charter because it's a long-term thing. It's like changing the Constitution. It's easier to do than changing the Constitution, but that's the only place that it says how many council members there will be. And if it is the judgment of the town that we ought to change it, up or down, then I think that's good. We do have those years when we can't even get enough people to run for the town council. And we have other years when, I screwed it up by saying I want to run. But that's, that's part of the way that government works. And I really think that although we have control, we're probably doing pretty well just where we are.
Phil, do you have anything? Would you like to add anything?
No, I think that was well said. I will say that as liaison to the Archives Committee, I'm looking for members in a chair, so somebody wants to volunteer, please do.
In a similar vein to what Phil was just saying, that I think one of the big links that we really can leverage more is the committees. So when I first joined the Historic Preservation Committee, I thought it was a lot of a direct advisory to the council. And it's not to say that it's not that. In theory, I was involved in the community board in Manhattan when I lived there, and it was very direct to the council member for that area, what came out of those committees. But that's something I'm trying to change with the Historic Preservation Committee. We're trying to bring issues forward for the council to be able to spread the word on those things. The same with the Land Use Advisory Committee. They supply some really good, as also volunteers in addition to the council, some very good advice on things and good analysis. So I think there's maybe ways to expand volunteerism beyond just having council members.
Thank you, candidates. A quick look over to Paul. Do we have anything? So just a reminder, if you're tuning in via our YouTube channel, you can send in questions to garrett.park.ca@gmail.com, and we'll read your question here in the room. Anything else from the room now?
I'll just say if anybody is listening remotely, I'm told it's freezing and the video quality hasn't been good, but the archive will still be available. So if you're toughing it through out there, thank you for your listening.
So actually, perhaps, I don't know if there are going to be other questions, but maybe let's take just a couple minute stretch break, see if anybody has additional questions, need to go to the restroom or anything. So let's reconvene in about 5 minutes.
An intermission.
Intermission.
All right, everyone, we're going to restart. Do another quick, yes. Next time I'll bring my gavel that I don't have. All right, any other questions? Did anybody think about anything during our little water break? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Todd Eisenstadt. I'm new to Garrett Park, so I'm one of the constituents, I guess, who should be brought some cakes and pies. So I live on Keswick Street. I'll give you my precise address if the recipe is good. My question, I guess, is just given that there's some differences of opinion regarding climate change at the national level, but that many localities are taking this up as an important issue. I guess I heard mention of diminishment of use of of plastic and straws, and that all sounds like it's a good step in the right direction, but I guess a question would be about whether Garrett Park might have some sort of comprehensive plan to address this issue, especially given that we're an arboretum, right? I understand. So I guess that's a question to all of the candidates. Thanks.
Thank you, and welcome. Phil, we'll start with you.
Well, I think there's a number of things that could be done. You know, it's been mentioned before, encourage people to purchase, you know, make it easier for people to purchase electricity and so forth from sources such as wind and solar and other renewable areas. I had proposed a while ago that the town buy at least one electric vehicle, and I think that I will propose that yet again. I know a number of people have been getting electric cars, and as part of the work on the Penn Place area, I would propose putting in at least one, if not two, charging stations, plus some exclusive use parking spots to encourage people to park their electric cars or other electric vehicles. And I would also say that our mayor has been leading the charge, if you will, on her electric scooter, and I would suggest those as another method of getting around, because they look kind of fun. And so those are the sorts of things, in addition to, as been mentioned before, you know, trying to corral our storm water to make sure that we do something with it before it goes over, because we'll never be able to contain it all within town, but at least we can make sure that it's in better shape before it leaves our environment, if you will, or our boundaries. And I would say overall, just trying to encourage people to recycle more and use less.
Dan?
So I love the topic. I work on it in my business tremendously. I think once the town is north of the sidewalk topic, we're going to find it's a new day, and we can choose what are the priorities. And I think, and I do think that's upon us now. So for me, the sidewalks are essentially in the rearview mirror. I think it's done. There's nothing stopping that. For those who didn't like it, I'm sorry. Let's find something you do like. And I mean, I think that that's where we're headed. So I think that the town could make a big impact at the national level by having a comprehensive plan, understanding that our comprehensive plan would make not one bit of difference to the actual climate, but we could be part of the movement and that tipping point. So I would certainly be in support of that. And I think we could do a lot, and it's really about effort. I know this from the private sector. It's about effort and diligence. It doesn't all have to cost money. So I guess the short answer is no. Currently, to my knowledge, there is not a comprehensive plan like that, but I think that you would get tremendous agreement actually from all four of these candidates, whichever three end up on the council, and the existing council members are really all in support of the type of direction that you're asking about.
Stephen?
Okay. Just on the plastic issue, I was proud to collaborate with Dan on. He was really adamant about looking to ban single-use plastic straws in our town, and I suggested, why don't we open it up to more to single-use plastics in general. We put straws as item number one, but it doesn't mean it can't be added on if other items are important in the future. One of the things that made me think that was I'd worked with Montgomery County Parks before on developing the plans for their office for the Park Stewardship Division, and they have the Rivers and Stream Department. It was amazing, the photos I saw of Rock Creek Park with how many plastic bags and everything else that was in it. So that was their biggest concern, was more trash so much more than even the stormwater. As far as Garrett Park, I fully support doing what we can for climate change. I would just worry about, let's make sure we move forward prudently. We don't just say, you know, we're going to feel good and just spend money and, you know, to try to contain as much water as possible. It may not be that practical. It may not be sensible. Because we're, as an inner ring suburb of a major city, we probably have one of the lowest lot coverages you would find in any inner ring suburb. We're only 18% max for a house and 20% total for a lot. So we're already doing quite a bit just by that. And we have a large tree and landscaping cover. So I think it's a matter of what more can we do that's smart beyond that, not just to feel good and spend a lot of money on it, but to not rest on our laurels with what we have, but move forward on it.
Todd, I'm not sure you were here at the beginning when I talked. Okay, let me give you one of these rather than answering the question, because I already answered it to everybody else. This is one of my flyers. What you'll see right in the middle there is that I want to focus on climate change. And I have 4 suggestions as just starting points for doing all of that. all of which I think are extremely important and things we ought to do, and I don't want to repeat it for everybody else. But what I would like to do is make sure that everybody in the audience comes and picks up one of my flyers so that you really know what it is that I'm trying to do and what I'm standing for.
Thank you, Peter. And I think we're winding down, but I do actually have a question myself. As brand new to the CA, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the relationship between the town council and the CA is, or the interaction should be. I'd just love to hear your vision on that. Peter.
Interestingly enough, when I was a co-president of the Citizens Association, it was a completely different organization. It did a limited amount of social activity, but the main thing that it did was be the voice of the council and the voice of the people. And it presented to the council lots of positions that represented where people were, and held a lot of meetings to discuss issues and find out where the town was and what the town wanted, and then brought that to the council. So it was sort of the loyal opposition, maybe, but very much it was a support to the council, and very effective in bringing issues and points up that otherwise would be people just sitting off in a corner saying, they're not doing this and they're not doing that, and they aren't telling council members, and council members aren't finding out. So at the Citizens Association had a very different feel to it. Now, that having been said, the Citizens Association is currently doing a whole bunch of really, really good things. And many of those activities are ones I would hate to see disappear. So if you could do both and, that would be nice.
Stephen?
In a way, I kind of see our CA as this body's NPR. It's almost like the NPR for the town. It has our bugle paper. It has meetings that can provide a forum beyond just the regular council meetings and special meetings. I took part in one of those before, and it was specifically strategized to, why don't we do that, make it more informal, more of an open discussion versus making it feel like a special meeting or a hearing where it's something is imminent to happen. But I think that CA has great functions for all that, and would like to continue that.
Dan?
So I'd like to see a deeper and more collaborative relationship between the CA and the council. I'm sure it's ebbed and flowed over the years, so I only know kind of the snapshots that I see, but I think it's a far more nimble and effective organization than is the council. And I would be a fan, and I brought it up we actually discussed it as a council, of allocating additional funds from the town budget to potentially fund the CA activities. I just think that sometimes the government needs to get out of its own way, and money is a resource. Put it in the hands of the people who can do the most good with it. So I think that continuing to try to have a really robust and dynamic and well-funded CA is an interesting path to go. I think it'd be great for the town.
Well, I agree with previous speakers insofar as I think that the CA could help us a lot by being able to bring in differing opinions, being able to do polls, being able to work on projects that maybe the town council couldn't do or wouldn't have the manpower or effort to do. As was put to me a while ago, the CA used to be the counterbalance, if you will, to the town council, and I believe that to some extent that's what they should continue to do, is be a counterbalance, or at least another opinion compared to the town council, but in addition bring things to the town council or hold meetings so town council members can get better idea of what's going on, better opinions and so forth, decisions being made. And of course, I would sure hate to see Porcupine Woods go, and a few other things that you guys put on so well and do so well with. Spooky Woods, I am so sorry. Porcupine Woods is in Spooky. Porcupine, they're gonna get me all balled up, no. But I sure would hate to see some of those things go, but I do believe that it would be great if we could get some more input from the CA, especially with, as it relates to some of the major decisions the town has to make or should make that we may not be.
So anything else from the room? Any other questions? Anything remote? Great. Well, I think that will close up our question and answer period, and then we have time for some short, brief closing remarks, and we'll just go the opposite way that we did for opening remarks. So, Phil?
Okay. Second here. So thank you for attending this forum tonight, both in person and online. And I'd like to thank the Citizens Association, especially the officers, for putting this together and hosting it. And as I've said, I bring a unique set of skills and perspective to the town council with over 30 years of both electrical and mechanical engineering experience. Re-elect me and have the confidence that I will continue listening to you, asking for your advice, and putting my full energy into the following initiatives: improving the way in which you interact with the town council, overseeing the project timeline and budget for the sidewalk, making sure that residents are informed as construction progresses, minimizing the impact of small cell towers within Garrett Park, ensuring that stormwater management projects really address residents' issues, increasing pedestrian safety around Penn Place. I live on Cambria Avenue next to the pool in front of the railroad tracks, and for work I consult with Amtrak on their high-speed trains, so one of my favorite hobbies is, of course, to watch trains go by. My wife Jean and I enjoy supporting Walter Johnson Crew, Go Crew. My daughter John is a 10th grader in her second year of rowing. I'll tell you what, if you've got a child, it's the best thing. It's great for parents, it's great for kids. Talk to me, I'd love to, love to talk to you about it. And my neighbors know they can rely on me for a spare tool, helpful mechanical advice, and even Christmas tree installation. Not to mention Christmas lights. If you come by, you'll see a few of those. In the Citizens Association, Women's Club routinely asks me to help with events like Progressive Dinner and July 4th celebration. I'm also a parent alum of the Garrett Park Nursery School, and if I'm re-elected, I will continue to serve you by listening with an open mind to your views and interests. I'd be honored to continue representing you as a council member, and I ask for your vote on May 6th. Thank you.
In the spirit of efficiency and time management, I feel like I've said enough tonight. You've heard enough from me, and I will give my time back to the House.
Dan, you've said a lot of good things, and I appreciate the many things you've said, and I agree with them. I really think that working together, all of us, not just the council, not just the council and the mayor, but all the people in this town, is a critical part of what we need to do to keep making a town that we love and that's a wonderful town even better. Now, I do believe, having listened to what other people said here, that I have been derelict in not letting you know some of the skills I might be bringing to the job if I join the council, and some of the areas in which I've worked and what that might have done for the town. First of all, beyond the town offices that I've held and that I listed for you before, I was the chair of the Washington Suburban Transit Commission and dealt with how money flowed to all the different organizations in the Washington area in transit. I was also the chair of the Metro Board and had to deal with Congress. I was chair during the time that we had our accident, and I was spending a lot of time testifying before Congress and dealing with those issues. And I was also the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer of Metro. And dealt with the finances of an organization that struggles with no home because it's a multi-state area, multi-state organization. Before that, I was with the Federal Transit Administration. I was associate administrator and did a whole range of different things, most of them policy related or financially related, but also research. All of the research reported to me. And probably my most fun and most glamorous job was not being mayor of this town. It was doing the mission planning and crew training for all of the Apollo lunar landing missions. which taught me an awful lot of how you relate to other people when there are really difficult jobs to be done, and how you deal with situations where you don't know what's going to happen, and you got to figure it out. And if you want to think of one of the worst of all of those, it was when I got called up in the middle of the night, and it was about Apollo 13, and they said, "You've got to come in right away. We have had an explosion, and we don't know what to do. Come in." And I was one of the people that came in and worked for many, many hours on that. It's a challenge, it was fun, and that's the same way, actually, I view public service here. It's a challenge, it's fun, and it gives me an opportunity to do good things for good people.
So keep mine almost as brief as Dan's. Thank you all for coming to Town Hall and or attending the live feed or whatever you could see on the live feed to hear our visions and our responses to questions. Like I said earlier, the town government is a great group that serves a great town. I'd be honored to continue contributing to its efforts with your vote on May 6th. If you have a question or a comment or even a complaint for me, or if you're itching to stick a campaign sign in your yard, please feel free to email me. My address is on the town website, and thanks again for everybody for coming.
That concludes our forum tonight. So thank you again, candidates, and thank you all for joining, both remotely and in person, and I encourage you all to vote.
Thank you, Alysia.
Good job. Stephen?
Good job.
Good.